You know, there are some stories that are just so wild, so unbelievable, they have to be true, right? Well, this is one of them. It's the story of a flight that literally vanished into thin air and then reappeared decades later completely untouched by time. Get ready for the impossible flight of Pan Am 914.
I mean, seriously, just think about that for a second. Can a commercial airliner, full of people, just land 37 years after it was supposed to? It sounds like a movie plot, something completely impossible. Or is it?
Because back in 1992, that's exactly the story people started to hear. A tale that's been passed around the internet for years, picking up new details and tons of believers along the way. It's a story that makes you question everything you know about time. So, let's dive into the legend. Now, our story doesn't really begin at the start. It starts at the absolutely mind-bending end, with what you could only call a ghost plane appearing over a busy international airport.
So, picture this. It's just a regular morning at the airport in Caracas, Venezuela. Air traffic controllers are doing their thing, and then a blip just shows up on the radar. An aircraft that isn't on any schedule, isn't talking to them, and well, it looks like it belongs in a museum.
Yeah, up in the control tower, things go from confusing to downright alarming. This plane is a relic, a propeller-driven Douglas DC-4, something you just don't see anymore. Its transponder is dead. And when they finally get the pilot on the radio, he sounds calm but completely lost. He says he's on his way from New York to Miami, which, is over 2,000 kilometers away from where he is now.
And then he drops the bombshell. He identifies his plane as Pan Am Flight 914. Now, there are two huge problems with this. First, Pan Am, the airline, had gone out of business a year before this. And second, Flight 914, well, that flight had a much, much stranger story attached to it.
To really get why everyone in that control tower was freaking out, we have to rewind. We're going back 37 years, to the day that plane first disappeared.
So, July 2nd, 1955. It was supposed to be a totally routine flight, New York to Miami. But less than 2 hours in, it just blinked off the radar. Poof, gone. There was no distress call, no warning, nothing. They launched this massive search, but found zero evidence. Not a scrap of metal, not a drop of fuel. The official ruling was tragic, but final. The plane crashed, no survivors, case closed.
37 years. That's how long Flight 914 was gone. I mean, think about that. An entire generation was born, grew up, and started families in that time. The world was a completely different place.
For all that time, it was just a cold case, a sad, forgotten tragedy collecting dust in a filing cabinet. But then, on that September day in 1992, that dusty old case was suddenly and impossibly blown wide open.
Okay, so what's really fascinating here is how this story went from a bizarre incident at one airport to a full-blown global phenomenon.
Well, the story got picked up by a tabloid newspaper. You know the type, famous for sensational headlines. And they didn't just report the story. Oh no. They ran with it, adding all these incredible details, supposed eyewitness accounts, and even some fuzzy photos as evidence.
The article claimed that when the plane landed, the passengers looked out the windows and hadn't aged a single day. The pilot was in a total panic, thinking only a couple of hours had gone by. And then came the big finale. After a tense moment on the tarmac, the pilot apparently freaked out, gunned the engines, and took off again, vanishing back into the clouds for a second time.
But the real smoking gun, the thing that made everyone go, whoa, was a supposed quote from the air traffic controller, a guy named Juan de la Corte. He allegedly confirmed he heard the pilot's voice, and it was the same captain from the flight manifest back in 1955. That one quote gave this crazy story a powerful ring of truth.
So you just have to ask yourself, could this be it? The one event that proves time travel or wormholes or some kind of weird time slip is actually real. A plane literally caught in a wrinkle in time for 37 years. It's an absolutely incredible thought.
But with any story this incredible, you've got to ask the big question. Is any of it actually true? It's time to separate the legend from reality.
All right, let's just rip the Band-Aid off right now. The entire story of Pan Am Flight 914, it's a complete fabrication. It never happened. Not the disappearance, not the reappearance, not a single bit of it.
Let's just break it down. People have dug through all the official archives. And the reality? There is zero record of a Pan Am Flight 914 ever existing, let alone crashing in 1955. That key eyewitness, Juan de la Corte? Total ghost. He never existed. And just think about it logically. If a plane from the 50s landed in the 90s, it would have been the biggest news story in human history. Every single news channel would have been all over it. But crickets. Not one credible outlet ever reported it.
So where did this whole thing come from? A tabloid called the Weekly World News. This paper was famous for making up crazy stories about bat children and aliens running for president. They published the first version of the story in 1992 and then a juicier, more detailed one in 93. Their goal was never to report the facts, it was just to sell papers by cooking up the most entertaining fiction they possibly could.
So if the whole thing is completely fake, why does this story refuse to die? Why are so many people still convinced that it's real, or at the very least, they want it to be real?
Well, the answer is pretty simple. It's a perfect modern myth. It has all the right ingredients. It mixes a real-world fear, a plane crash, with something totally fantastical, like time travel. Then you sprinkle in a little hint of a government cover-up, and boom, you've got a story that's just too good to fact-check. At the end of the day, the legend of Flight 914 sticks around because it is a fantastic story. It lets us imagine, just for a moment, that the universe is way more mysterious and magical than it probably is. It really shows you the power of a good story to capture our imagination, even when we know the facts.
The tale of Flight 914 is a great reminder that just because something is written down or goes viral doesn't make it real. It encourages us to stay curious, but also to be critical thinkers. So it leaves me with one question for you. In this age of endless information, what story will you question next?